Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at the acrylic line of paints from Archive X, and more specifically this is their A New Hope Millennium Falcon set. As always, I'll provide a link to Archive X as well as their new US distributor Newtype in the description below. So I've known of Archive X for some time, even during my build of the Falcon, but they only had enamels. And because I had some familiarity with Vallejo acrylics, I really wanted to stay with the acrylic line of paint. So while I was building the model, and then certainly once the build was, or the assembly was complete, I looked at Vallejo first in terms of what types of colors and paint options that they had. And what I've noticed was that, you can see here, it became very difficult to recreate some of the colors. And so what I ended up doing was I sampled and tested a lot of different paints, and you can see here I have a lot of different swatches of paints that I tried. I was focusing on the grays because there's quite a bit of grays on the Falcon, and then the other part was the yellows as well, and then to some degree also the reds. But you could see here it was really driving me crazy to try to find the right tone. And the nice thing about Archive X is that it's one of the, I think the only paint company that is actually striving to replicate and recreate the specific hues and color tones of the original paints that the modelers used when they were painting all of the models for Star Wars. So, but they didn't have acrylics out just yet when I had completed the assembly of the Falcon. So basically I had to wait a little bit. It's been probably roughly 2 years since the build, but now Archive X has their acrylic line out. And so during that time, I really had used the Vallejo paints specifically for the figures, the interior cockpit, the turrets, and I think it turned out fine. I'll share some info around that later, but I really wanted something that was simple, was easier. I didn't have to mix colors. I don't have the time or patience or really the knowledge or skills to really dial in the colors from Vallejo or anyone else, just because it was just, I'm not that experienced. But what Archive X has done is they've created a line of paints that really is like plug and play. There's nice references out there that shows what color goes on what panels, and then there's all sorts of misting and weathering and stuff that gives the Falcon the end result. But I wanted to start off with the right paints for something that iconic and that visible. So we'll get started here. So this particular set, and Archive X has many other different sets as well as many different paints. I think they're up to about 45 or 50 different color paints and multiple sets for like Slave 1 and the AT-ATs, etc., etc. But for this particular set, there's actually 3 subsets. So this first one here on the left, this is considered set 1, and take a look at these paints. And so it goes from left to right: Engine Black, Weather Black, SP Lark Dark Gray, SP Lark Light Gray, and Dark Grime. Then the middle set here is their set 2A. So Reefer White Foundation, Depot Buff, Reefer Yellow, Reefer Orange. And this last set here is their set AF. So you've got Boxcar Red, Rust, Concrete, Light Reefer Gray, SP Lettering Gray. So I think one of the best things about this set is that you saw previously when I was showing you my Vallejo swatches that the grays were very difficult to try to recreate. So one of the advantages of this particular set is that it includes all of the various grays that is needed for the Falcon, so it takes the guesswork out of trying to source those particular colors and hues. So just the comparison between the Archive X bottle as well as the Vallejo bottle. So here's how they look. The Archive X contains 30 mLs of paint, whereas the Vallejo, there's 17 mLs. Archive X is typically around $10 a bottle. Vallejo, you can find them from $3 to $5 per bottle. So when you average them all out, it's similar in cost, but I think especially for Star Wars models, the Archive paint really shines because it really is meant for those. I think if you're painting just normal craft projects or anything that's not Star Wars related, these might be a little bit overkill, but these are still good quality paints. Both of these are. So it's just kind of pick your poison in a way. So moving on. So what I've been doing is whenever I get new paints, I typically will practice and get a feel for them. So what I've done here is I typically will spray spoons. So a couple things. One, it gives me an idea of how the paint performs, but also two, it gives me a nice color palette for reference. So just a quick look at what I normally do here is I'll write on the back of the spoon. So like in this case, I primered all of this with Tamiya Gray, and then this one is the Depot Buff. So I include that information just as a reference point. So this is typically when I get to play around with the pressures, the thinning ratio. And so what I've noticed for the Archive X paints is, if you're familiar with Vallejo, so this was Model Air. I also have their regular model color line. The Archive X kind of falls in between these. The Model Air really is pretty thin. I don't need much thinner to push this to the airbrush. The model color line, I have been able to thin this to the extent where I can spray it in an airbrush, but this I'll probably be adding much more thinner. But from a general reference perspective for Archive X, I've been, for probably about every 10 drops of the Archive X, I use about 8 drops of thinner and 2 to 4 drops of flow improver, and that's at 25 psi using a 0.5 millimeter nozzle. So with the Archive X paints, they also have their own thinner line, so I've used this. I've also used the Vallejo thinner. They both work equally well. And then for flow improver, I use Vallejo as well. And so basically I start at those numbers, and then typically what I'll do is I'll adjust the amount with the flow improver. So if it's still too thick, I'll add a little bit more of the flow improver, and then if not, that's usually where I kind of play with. So but in short, that is a look at the Archive line of paints. So I think the next step here really is to look at my reference photos, start looking at getting started on the painting process. So alright guys, take care.